Yeah, so now we have Jacob from Pixels on stage and Kate from Bestseller. As you can see, the chair drop, we have a Bestseller case study. Bestseller was one of the first clients we had on the Creative Force software. And Pixels recently launched a concept called 3-hour turnaround time, Flow, in post-production. So if clients are sending images to Pixels, you can turn them around within 3 hours if they're in a flow. I think that's pretty unique, and that is also what Jasper talked about, like having the whole supply chain supporting this. So this is what you're going to talk about, and welcome.
Thank you, Thomas. He's completely right. Now we've been listening to Jasper, we've been listening to Elena, and hearing a little about on the theoretical side of the operation when it comes to data application and flow. And what we're going to be trying to do, Kate and I, is to look at how you actually take this and apply flow in your operation. So trying to be very hands-on here and looking at the case of Bestseller, because what Kate and her team have been through over the last half a year or so has been quite a journey, and it's basically been a complete transformation of your operation and led to dramatically reducing lead times and increasing throughputs. So we want to share some of the experience that we've had with this process with you guys, and hopefully there's some takeaways for you. So my name is Jakob Østerby. I'm the CEO at Pixels. I've been responsible for implementing the retouch workflow automation at Pixels, which is sort of the backbone of everything that we do. It's enabled us to basically reduce any manual work. There's no file handling. And essentially that's enabled us to automate almost 50% of our production today, constantly increasing, so working on that. And Kate, maybe you can introduce yourself, please.
Yeah. All right, I'm not so good at the microphone, so. My name's Kate, as you know from the image. I have two roles in Bestseller. Well, does anyone know who Bestseller is? Is anyone aware of who Bestseller? Maybe I should start there. Okay, guys in the front. Danish brand. We own 19 brands actually, so it's the umbrella of 19 brands. The top three are Jack & Jones, Only, and Veramoda. So maybe you know one of those three. We have 16 other brands, so 19 in total. And they're based in Denmark, I'm based in Amsterdam, our studio's in Poland, and between those three sites I manage digital content, so what should go live, what partner requirements we have, what images and partner requirements, personal requirements we have, brand requirements, as well as managing our photo studio. I was brought on board a little under a year ago to a super manual process, Excel docs, Google Docs, everything you can imagine, super inefficient. And they told me, you've got a year to turn it around. So we're going to talk about how we did that, together with Pixels and together with Creative Force, from start to finish, and how we are, at the moment, probably the happiest we've been. I still have a job, so which means in the year we did it. Yeah, so we're excited to explain how we did it, how you guys can do it, and how, if you have any questions, please raise your hand as we continue, so we can kind of answer those as we go. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Kate. So, like you said, we've been through quite a journey. This is showing the lead time of Bestseller, going from one extreme to another, going from having 27 days of lead time on a bad day down to 3 hours on a very good day, which is, I think, quite extraordinary. We're happy with that, Kate, right? That's all right. All right. We can bring it down. So, before we get to more metrics and we get into the weeds of how Bestseller did it, we just want to take a little bit of a step back and talking about sort of what flow is, what flow is not, just to set the scene for the thought process behind that and what you guys have been working on in the studio. So the opposite of flowing is basically batching. So when we're talking about batching, it is to basically move your assets in groups throughout the different production steps in your process. So instead of having products move forward on an asset level, you would group it by 10, 20, 50, whatever fits with your current workflow. I think that's probably something that most of you are familiar with. And that is something that we want to avoid at all costs. And because batching is leading to bottlenecks. And studios bottleneck because humans batch. So think about that for a second. I think we can all agree that nobody wants bottlenecks, right? That's an evil. So why is it that we do it? The problem is that there hasn't been the technology out there to support flow to the extent needed. So basically, batching has been a necessary evil in operations, and the good thing is that that is not needed anymore. But these are typical examples of batching going on every single day. It could be moving files, doing file naming, making selects, QA, running scripts. You don't want to run a script on a single asset. And probably the worst sinner is status tracking, because that goes on everywhere in the operation. If we take it down on a very specific example, we're looking at a process basically from shot to site. This is a very typical process that you have a product being shot in the morning. That product is then being moved to a folder, and at the end of the day, it's being sent to your retouching partner, right? Typically, you would have 24 hours at your retouching partner in turnaround time, meaning that you get that asset back the following day and the end of the day. Too late to get it online. Meaning that on the third day, you would get it online, but probably most likely at the end of the day where your sync is running. So in this case, you actually wasted 2 days of online time. It's very costly, especially when looking at some of the operations that you guys have, very high volumes. There's a ton of wasted opportunity there. Good thing is we've got Flow to the rescue. So we already touched a little bit on Flow. Jasper talked a lot about it. We're not going to go that deep. If you want to have a drink later on with Jasper and really nerd about this, I think that could be a lot of fun. But we're going to keep it on the surface for now. And Flow is now possible. And that's basically what we've seen with Bestseller and personified by Creative Force. There are tools out there that is now enabling Flow that is removing all these manual processes, and that is amazing. And basically, it allows the same process that we saw before when you have batching, which took 3 days basically to get that product to market, is now taking 1 day. So in this case, we still have the product being shot 9 in the morning. You have a vendor that is supporting 3-hour turnaround time, and you get that back by noon, means that it's ready to be uploaded in that sync at 3 p.m., for instance, or end of the day. So basically, you went down to shut the site on 1 day. So killing 2 days, yeah, I think that's a good use case. There's a few principles of Flow that are incredibly useful and that really supports your operation. One of them is to work without delay, like not batching, but working without delays. You're able to identify and eliminate bottlenecks on the fly, getting that data insights and being proactive in your operation instead of reactive. You are able to address the root and not the symptom. I think most of us have been through a scenario where we've been adding more QA to a process because it's not functioning, instead of maybe looking at what is the underlying issue and actually fixing that altogether. It's actually enabling you to do less and better. You're able to reduce the complexity in the operation. Thomas touched on it a little bit earlier. That allows you to actually increase your quality as well. And then finally, but not probably most importantly, it allows you to open up for continuous improvement. You get some immediate gains from it, but having that actionable insights into your operation gives you and your people the chance to actually operate with the knowledge and act on that on every single day and make those continuous improvements, those gradual improvements every single day. That's really what makes a big difference in the long run. On the talent side, there's a huge benefit to this as well. You've got a lot of great talent in your studio. Make sure to keep them in the interface where they belong, where they want to be. Like, photographers should be in Capture One. Retouchers should be in Photoshop, etc. They should not be moving around into different Excel sheets, Google Sheets, project management tools, wherever they live, to do the status tracking updates or whatever they may be doing. Keep them where they live. It increases the productivity, but it also removes these repetitive manual work and actually keep your guys more engaged, more motivated, which then in turn also improves your retention. So it could actually turn out to be a competitive advantage to you. So Kate, moving to bestseller. A few weeks after the implementation of Creative Force, one of your colleagues, one of your very good colleagues, Katie's, came up with this statement that they cut the lead time by more than half within the second week with Creative Force. And they're planning to cut it by another half within the month. Sounds familiar?
Yeah, and this was last year, August, so we've actually cut it by 80% in total. So this is get us is a little bit outdated, but yeah. We did.
All right. So this is what really happened. So this was end of August, start of August, inception of Creative Force. So it's pretty drastic, right? Moving from 16-day average turnaround time, average lead time, dropping all the way down to 6 days. So what Katie said, the plan to drop like down to to 8, but actually managed to take it down by 10 days, basically from inception. And you could imagine what that means to an operation, what it means to budgets, what it means to all the metrics that you've been measured on. It's quite substantial. And then what's interesting is that it sort of flatlined for a month here, and then it took another big dip from 6 days and to 2 days. And basically now you just crossed the bar here of 2 days in March, which is like working with the continuous improvement. So this is over time. I think when we meet again, maybe later this year, who knows, we can zoom in on what it looks like a few months from now. Hopefully it's going to move down to like 1.5 and so on. And that's all the continuous improvement initiatives that have been taken. But I want to zoom in on this drop, because this one was basically the inception of Creative Force and all the benefits that came with that, all the manual work out and focusing on the real processes. But the drop here from 6 to 2 days, I want to zoom in on that one because it's kind of interesting. And also coming back to the case that we had before, like getting shut to in the same day. So back in October, end of October, we actually started a test with bestseller and pixels, going from a standard 24-hour turnaround time down to 3-hour that was enabled by Flow. So having a fixed 3-hour turnaround time on post, and this is actually what happened. So I think we can disregard this spike to 8, but I think it's fair to say that they were pretty around 6 days lead time at the time.
It's a little bit misleading because it says hours, not days, but it is days.
It's dates?
It's days.
It's days?
Yeah.
So 6 days, I think is fair to say. And this is basically when we implemented the 3-hour. So end of October, this is what happened right here. So why would it go from 6 days to 2 days, right? We just saw before that you can save 2 days by implementing Flow, 3-hour production. So why is it 4 days? And I think that is one of the beautiful things about Flow and getting that insight into your operation, remove the complexity. It is that there's so many derivative effects from it that I don't think we can even point to like 1 or 2 or 3 that is causing these extra 2 days. There's so many things so many benefits from implementing this. And with that in mind, I think we've sort of shown where we are now, Kate, and it's going to be super interesting to follow how you guys are going to continuously work on this and how you're going to bring it down even further. But maybe we need to take a step back and maybe you can share kind of why you ended up, like why did you go into this process of moving into Flow? You talked about all these sheets beforehand and so on, but what was the thought process behind that?
Good question. All right, so I think most of you have photo studio knowledge or you're involved in it from an operations point of view, from a creative point of view, from whatever point of view it is. We had a lot of frustration on a daily basis. And it got to a point where I was only dealing with frustration all the time with my team, right? Explaining to them, it's like this in every other studio. This is normal. Excel docs are normal. Why are you not filling the correct, formulas? Why is it date or month, year, not year, month, date? These kind of really ridiculous metrics that you're consistently dealing with. And I started to think, I don't want 68 unhappy people every day, and I don't want to deal with them every day asking me when it's going to get better. It needed to get better, we knew this, but we didn't have the right vendor for it. So we actually went into, can I give a little bit of a background? Is that fine? We went into RFP process, had 6 potential vendors, we're down to 3, and we were a little bit uncomfortable at that point, but we were like, okay, let's do it. And then Jacob slid in, I think, like hour 23 and a half.
Something like that.
And we had the quickest RFP delivery from you guys, I think it was 1 day. And we read it and we thought, that's it. That makes sense. It's like speaking with people that understand the process, not just people that are trying to solve problems from a, let's say, more business point of view. But they were trying to solve problems from the problem point of view. And that was in March last year. We started. So yes, we implemented in August. I'll tell you something interesting. We didn't only implement in August. We moved 24 studios across the road. We implemented Creative Force. There was a third thing, but I don't think it's important now. We did that over 1 weekend with no downtime. And that was I was like, team, we got this. If you want less frustration, let's do this. And they were like, cool, on board. And they're Polish, so they were like, yeah, on board. Yeah, and we did it. And the Monday we started, and I think by the Wednesday, it was like, how is it so easy? Like, we're doing something wrong. We must be doing something wrong. Okay, Jacob, what are we doing wrong? I think get us call was like always on communication with Thomas and Matthias, and like, are we doing something wrong that's making it so easy? Because it's hard to change a mindset. You know, you're so used to where are the docs, where are the Excel sheets, how are we going to get this data, what does it mean? Yeah, and that's the kind of long-winded version. We implemented in August, and as you can see by the matrix, it took a little while to get used to it because it's a little bit of a different system. Now we're like super in it. What I wanted to mention, which Jasper touched on earlier, was data and what the data is, because it's maybe a bit confusing, is that each step now has a check-in point. So instead of the Excel doc that you're like trying to timestamp it all the way, you've got check-ins. So photography, retouch, QC, check out. And that is where you're getting the metrics from, and that's how we can see all of this on a daily basis, yeah. So that's pretty much the Creative Force story in studio, yes. Yeah, I guess you got it from Looker.
This is from Looker.
Yeah, we're using two versions personally. One is the 6 reports that are kind of pre-generated in Creative Force, and then the Looker where you can log in and kind of create your own, which are not necessarily standard, as Jasper was saying, but like invoicing reports or whatever other kind of reports you want. So there's the two that we're working with. Our team is also, maybe operations team needs a different report to photographic team, so yeah.
I was just asking what the training process looked like.
So we did it in a really interesting way, right? I didn't want everybody to understand the whole process. That makes no sense. Like operations doesn't need to understand style guides. Photography doesn't need to understand QC. So we kind of tiered it off and took each team and gave them insights into what they would be working in. The team lead first, and then from team lead down, right? That's how you grow the team. And we did that. I mean, it wasn't months worth of training. It was maybe 2-3 weeks of kind of understanding. And Creative Force also every 2 weeks brings out updates. So it's not a, like, here it is and that's it, you're left alone to figure it out. Every 2 weeks we have chats, we have questions, we've got intercom, which is a really interesting way to ask questions and annoy the guys quite a lot, but they have to answer in 5 minutes, so it's amazing. And they do. And yeah, I got my teams involved in only their area. And then if they wanted to branch out, they could, right? They could start asking questions on either side of their area, but I mean, the thing is, and what you were saying was the photographers are still working in Capture One. They're not suddenly having to work in a new system, so they understand it, and they're just doing what they do without the admin. So immediately the learning part became like 2% instead of the manual part, which was like 25-30%. Yeah.
Can we maybe take a step further into how the different people in the studio, like different roles, how they've been like taking this on, how they've been, and how they're using it, how, like, what has the reaction been to making this change?
Yeah, I mean, when you make a big change, you get kicked back, right? That's what's going to happen. And I think yesterday, if any of you were here yesterday, speaking about sometimes there's bad apples and sometimes you have to shift things around a little bit and put certain people in different places that are kind of more suitable for them. I took a real deep dive into each personality type because cross-culturally it's a little bit of an interesting dynamic. I'm South African, they're Polish, so how does this work, right? To understand what they want and what they need, and if they're on the same journey as I am, then that's good, and that bestseller is, that's good. And if they weren't and they were just getting a paycheck but not really being on this path of growth, then we had to look at that too. So we actually cut our head count by quite substantial, about 35, 40%. We had to, because there was suddenly not a lot of work for the manual parts of the business. And suddenly we allowed our teams to be like super creative in what they needed to be creative in. It took a little while, but now they're like, I can't believe we never had this. But in the beginning, of course, there were a little bit of a pushback. Mostly, I guess, from operations type teams, because the photographers are still doing what they do. I mean, we have a little tagline that kind of adds to yours, which is like, put the people and processes in place so that the creatives can just do what they need to do and not be tied down by anything, and they're not now. So is that answering the question? I may have gone like full off tangent.
It did answer my
Okay.
question. Thank you. And so, can you speak to? You're saying that you're in Amsterdam. You have some of the brands in Denmark, some of the stakeholders there, the studios in Poland. How does that work for you? And has there been a change for you since the implementation in terms of managing this?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of our RFP process was live updates, so I could see what was happening in the studio no matter where I was. I traveled quite a lot, and I don't want to be calling, Skyping, emailing. So I want to be able to log in, see where we are every day, every minute, essentially every hour, whatever it is. And that drastically changed just transparency for myself and my team, because I could see every day, like, I mean, we have a really, really short turnaround time now, but if a product's in studio for longer than 4 days, I want to know why, and I can see what it is. Like, there's notes, okay, maybe we haven't got the right model, maybe the product's damaged, but on a product level, so super granular, you can look at exactly what's happening from wherever you are. So I can be in Denmark and I can be looking at what's happening in Poland or Amsterdam or vice versa, and so can anyone who has access. So my team can do that, our management can do that. Yeah, so it's just like making it a little bit easier to have insights without having to wait for a reply or be on site. Yeah.
Any questions at this point?
Yes. Yeah.
So when you automate a process like that, I mean, it's a big endeavor, right? So you've got, like you said, there's 5, 6 departments that are involved. Were you able to do the implementation with little customization, or in other words, out of the box, or did you need to tweak the process?
The tweakable processes are things like style guides, workflows, presets, and those are maybe 3 foreign terms if you're not working in it, but it's the same thing we have now, right? Image guidelines, etc., etc. And that's the tweakable areas. The rest of it we didn't want to, because that's how we all got stuck. You know, workarounds. Let's just do this outside. Let's do that over there. And that's really heavy. And we wanted to become super light, right? Lean, light. I guess it's the same flow. It's just like ease through the process. So no, we had no workarounds aside from the initial setup. And then, of course, every 2 weeks we have these updates, which are super helpful. And that's what we need to then like learn every 2 weeks. But I think the benefit of making that kind of change is to eliminate everything from scratch, pull the plaster off, move the studios, implement the software, that's it, go. Rather than having these workarounds, which I think every company is so used to having, that we're kind of wondering when we're not having them, why they're not there. And it's just like thinking a little bit differently, right? Yeah, in the beginning we were kind of requesting an enrichment segment. We thought that was part of the initial needs, but we then decided to not require that anymore, and that was the only thing that changed, I think, a little bit for expectation-wise. But other than that, we were asking for things because we were used to asking for them, and the guys kept saying, you don't need that. Like, why are you using the word priority? What is that? Like, why are you using it? And we were like, because that's higher priority. But if it's all happening within the turnaround time you need it to, then you don't need to have those kind of words that are like stuck in people's minds, priority. Like, that's more important, or you don't have to have that. So it was more about breaking our own boundaries down, I think, and rethinking it ourselves and trying to understand, like, they're smart guys that made Creative Force, right? Like, we wouldn't have been able to think that whole process ourselves. So let's try and fit it and see if it works, and if it doesn't, we ask questions. And it worked, so it working.
Kate, you mentioned Style Guide now a few times. Can you maybe...
Yeah, question.
All right.
Hey, how long did it take to configure the tool to work for your process and workflow?
Good question. We have a digital content coordinator who's responsible for all of that. So it was about 2 weeks, I guess, from taking 11 brands worth of style guides, presets, workflows, and also post-production vendor, like external or not. It took about, I think, 2 weeks, just to kind of like set the foundation. And then On top of that, we now have like monthly sprint changes where we only change things after a month. But yeah, I think most of it's getting used to the ease of it. It's like I think going from, no offense, Android to Apple. It's like you're wondering why it's so easy to just drag that over there. It was that. It was like trying to understand it. But yeah, 2.5 weeks maybe, just to be safe. Yeah.
All right, back to my question, Kate.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
style
Style guides.
Yeah, you mentioned it like as a core concept here. Can you just briefly explain to people how style guide is, how that operates for you when you use Creative Force and how that follows through the whole process?
I can. All right. So we have a 197-page image guideline document that we use as a Bible. No one reads it because it's 197 pages, and by page 7 you're a bit bored. So what is there? Can we show? Maybe later. What the style? Yeah. Oh, okay. Style guides. It's predetermined areas where you're dropping images. So if we need front, back, crop, side crop, detail, then that's predetermined. And as our photographers are shooting, they're just dropping like front, crop, side. And then what the style guides are doing are automatically renaming, automatically resizing, and automatically sending to where it needs to go. I think that's a very short overview of style guides, but it's like the binding basis for what everything needs to run through.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any more questions? Sebastian? We have plenty of time.
Okay.
We're good.
Wow.
You mentioned that you had an RFP, and you mentioned one criteria was the ability to browse the data from anywhere in the world. What were the other criteria?
Can you repeat the last part? I heard the first part, but I didn't hear the last.
What were the other? So you had an RFP looking for. Sorry.
You had an RFP looking for, in particular, the ability to access your data all around the world, but you probably had other criteria that Creative Force met, and I'm curious about these criteria. What were they?
I think there were 147, to be honest. So a lot of it was automation. Like no file handling was a super important one. No file handling, no naming. Right? My team would make mistakes. They're human, and if you're going through 45 products a day, 50 products a day, 8 images a product, you're going to make a mistake. So it was full automation. No file handling was like massive one. The other one was ease of use, I guess. And also a really big one for me was being able to see the assets in every step of the process, not only during but after. So if I want to go back to photography step or QC step or asset delivery step, I wanted to be able to have full transparency and not just deliver and then be like, that was it. There was 146 others, but I'm happy to share those with you if I can just get the document out. Yeah.
You mentioned the studios in Poland.
Yeah.
You mentioned the studios in Poland, but I'm assuming, maybe wrongly, that the tool is in English. What did you do with that scenario, or is there a capability to have it in different languages, the tools that you're using?
Yeah, super good question. We are an English company because we have a Danish teams, Polish teams, Dutch teams, English teams. So English was our, I guess, language of choice or preferred language. I'm not sure if you can actually change. No, you can't. But what has helped actually is our team to understand, let's say, theories and naming conventions better in English than they used to. So, and most of them do speak English too. Yeah. Yes.
To achieve that 3-hour turnaround, did you have to upgrade like your CMS, other platforms and tools you use?
Interesting question. What we're responsible for is from forecast to asset delivery. That's it, right? So.
3 hours is from shoot to asset.
Yeah, exactly, from check-in to check-out, yeah. So each brand has their own BSDAM or whatever it is that they have. We just deliver it there. And then, as Jacob said, sometimes it's like 48 hours it sits there, which is thankfully not our responsibility as well, because that would be a whole nother set of issues, yeah. Yes?
I have a question about the style guide you were talking about. You say you shoot, you drag it in through Creative Force into the style guide, it names it, it assigns it. How does it get to the production process there?
So it's an automated process, but what it does is, you're familiar with Kanban, right? It moves it through similar to that. So there's I'm not sure if you should go this deep, but there are a few, within Creative Force, there's a few other tools. One is called Hue, which is, I think, named after a Vietnamese city, but anyway, also, yeah. And it comes up in a kind of Kanban board where our retouchers can then select which ones they'd like to retouch, which ones they'd like to send to external post, for example. So our retouchers are in charge of that. So they can send easy things out, they can select what they need to do, and then it opens up in Photoshop, and then they retouch and save automatically, and then it goes into the next Kanban, let's say, which is QC. So it's super automated. They're just picking, retouching, delivering the whole time. Yeah. They're not having to exactly download them, retouch them, re-upload them, no. Yeah.
So you kind of talked about in the beginning where, you're trying to get rid of this priority concept.
Yeah.
But let's say if you have really a large load of inbound that you have to get through, there is probably still some sort of a priority you have to establish, right? So how do you, better plan for that pre-production to make sure that it goes through the pipeline within the SLA and then split across the different, maybe you have different studios that are running different parts of the world. How do you manage that process with Creative Force?
Yeah, I guess good forecasting is essential for any photo studio operation. Really good forecasting. We have a good operations team who knows what's coming, hopefully a week in advance, sometimes not, and they can allocate teams to various studios. So we have 24 studios that are able to be used. We have teams that we can then move around depending on what it is. So our photographers, for example, are never under pressure. I don't want them to be. They should get to studio and know what they should do, and not be like, this is extra, this 68 today, or whatever it is. We stick to our targets every single day, and the operations team is then responsible for just moving the right amount of product into the right amount of studios. But yeah, we have a 7-day SLA, and we haven't been outside that in about 3 months. So for us, the priority is not really a thing. It's more just put it in the correct studio and put the correct team there, and let the rest of the process happen naturally. How do we distribute the work? Okay, so on a brand level, of course. There's one little key element here. We're in Poland, and we need models, and they're not coming from Poland necessarily. So sometimes it takes a little while because models need to be booked, and they need to travel there, etc. So the model studios are quite a variable in terms of that. The Ghost Mannequin Hanger studios are running full time, so distributing that is pretty easy, right? You're just taking the next load every single day, depending on which studio. With regards to model booking or model studios, that's kind of dictated by the model availability. Yeah. Model booking, yeah. Yeah, of course it's a person taking it to where it needs to go, right? But yeah. If Creative Force could do that, deliver the product to the studio, that would be great, but...
It's a lot about Creative Force now. I think it's great that you like the tool. But to all the people here that doesn't have Creative Force, that doesn't have an opportunity to get that, do you have learned anything during the process that you wish that you had known before that you could do easily without this tool and so on? Or also with the continuous improvement and so on. Can you speak about that?
Maybe I don't understand the question. Can you ask it again?
Huh?
Can you ask the question again? Would I do anything outside of Creative Force?
So yeah, outside of the tool, what kind of learnings that did you have in the process of optimizing production and so on that you could have done without a tool? Yeah.
Good question, and I don't really know. To be honest, I have no idea how we would have done it. I think we were doing it the best way we could at that point. I mean, it's a lot about people too, right? I think nobody took the time to speak to all the people from base level up and to understand what their needs were, and maybe that would have been a better way of doing it, to understand if they're doing it because they're told or they're doing it because they think it's really the right way. And maybe that's how we all got into this mess of admin and sheets. And I'm not saying it's the wrong way to do it. Maybe they could be super useful, but I think the correct way of using them is maybe the better, the way of doing it outside of Creative Force. I can't think of how we would do it outside Creative Force now, so maybe that's not the most useful answer, but yes.
Question in the back? It's a 5-minute warning. Okay, thank you. So we're closing in here,
Yep.
Kate. Do you have any, like, going through this process, it's been quite a transformation for the organization, for the culture, how to work in the studio. Did you have any surprises along the way? Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, we had loads of surprises, of course. One thing that happened was in September last year, we lost one of our big brands that we were shooting for. So we had prepared this entire 6-month forecast, what we were going to do. And yeah, we lost one of the brands. And therefore, morale was quite low. We had a discussion earlier about morale being low and about, let's say, management making choices, going through management and just kind of rolling that out without really thinking about the individual people. That was a bit of an issue, I think, is trying to motivate people across operations, creative, retouch, and to all be on the same page and to all have the same mindset of using a new tool, dealing with changes, dealing with friends losing their jobs that are right next to you, and still trying to keep motivation up. I think that was something I didn't think about because I was so process-driven that I forgot maybe sometimes that people are a really big part of the process and we should focus a lot on them. And Creative Force, it allows that because it takes away the manual and you can actually sit and have real-time discussions with your team and not just about why you're not finished, but more about like how can I make you happier, what can we do to lift up spirits and things like that. So yeah, and that was one of the biggest kind of knocks, yeah.
I think speaking from our experience with implementing a similar system, well, our own system in our production at Pixels, I think one of the big things, and we actually just touched on it, but the thing is you can have the best tool in the entire world, but if you don't have the right people to execute on it, if you don't create the right culture around that, if you don't have that change management process, and then it doesn't really matter. It's the same way you can have the best people in the world, but if they don't have the right tools, if they don't have the right processes, you're not going to get that either. So it can't be a standalone thing, it has to come together. So there's also a huge educational element to it by implementing a new tool. But I guess that's what you've also seen, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think everyone who's been a manager or is a manager or has a team, you realize it's never about you ever again. It's never going to be about you. Right? It's about the team, and it's about motivating them and making sure that they're heard and their voices are heard and they've got like room to develop and room to grow. So I think that's exactly what you're saying, right? It's like change management is super important. If you haven't got someone, if you've got like only an operations or business-minded team, it's difficult. If you've got only a creative team, it's difficult. And somewhere in the middle of that, there's some kind of happy medium where you can kind of make these changes and still motivate your team. So.
All right.
Are we done?
We're really closing in on. So 2 minutes left. Kate, any kind of advice, anything that you feel like these guys should take home from this session other than what they've heard already?
Yeah, loads. But you're welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions or if you want to talk a little bit more about the frustrations and the pain points. I obviously love talking about this and maybe too much so, but it's an overwhelming feeling, I guess, to stand up here a year later and know that we've done it, which was super impossible to foresee in the beginning. So yeah, if you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out. But yeah, I think we probably can do some kind of demos and whatever we need to do. Maybe if people want to see exactly the process, what style guide means, what all these things mean. I think that's maybe a lot easier to understand what we're talking about rather than, the graphs and just the like final output, but maybe just the process in between. So
yeah.
I agree.
I think Thijs is going to show a little bit, but we're not going to do like demos and so on. You have to reach out. I think it's more about like the flow part and so on, and like however you want to achieve it with your software and so on. It's kind of up to you. I think. Thank you, Kate. You're doing a great job selling Creative Force, and that's fantastic. But
I don't work for Creative Force, just to make sure everyone knows that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So next we're going to have a panel. Any more questions for Kate and Jacob? Yeah.
Yep.
After QC, when they move to the next step, is it automatically uploaded to the respective DMs?
Yeah. Yeah. With whatever metadata you want to attach to it at the same time. Yeah. Pardon me?
What kind of assets?
All of them. So no, we are specifically e-com studio. So it's model, product, flat, overhead, tabletop, like you saw all the options. Yeah, purely e-com.
I think we're flowing into lunch.
Great. Thank you.